On Monday, the man who answers the question, "Can dark-haired white men be considered bimbos?" asked a series of incredibly stupid questions. You know, his usual show. But this one in particular caught my attention because of the cryptocurrency angle. By the way, for the record, the answer to my bimbo question is yes. And my evidence is Tucker Carlson. Here's the situation. At about 2 a.m. Eastern Time last Wednesday, the FAA system that is meant to distribute notices to pilots regarding hazards, known as NOTAMs, for notice to air missions, experienced a database corruption and had to be taken offline, which caused the FAA to order a halt to all domestic departures until 9 a.m. while it brought the system back online. Within the past 3-ish week window, events have also taken place in Canada and the Philippines that caused flights to be grounded and rerouted. What in the world could be causing such events? Let's see what Tucker has to say.
Well, here's a really interesting story. So 5 days ago, last Wednesday, the FAA ordered a ground stop on all air travel in the U.S. That meant that not a single commercial or private aircraft was allowed in the skies over this country. And that's very serious. Hard to overstate the seriousness of that, actually. The only other time this country has imposed a national ground stop was after 9/11, the terror attacks 21 years ago. So it's a
Hold up. My bullshit sensors are already tingling. Did the U.S. really stop flights the same way it did after 9/11? Let's see. According to Snopes, this is a mixture of true and false. What's true is that the FAA did pause all domestic departures until a specified time. What's false is that this was only a ground stop. Flights already in the air were permitted to land at their destinations. In contrast, on 9/11, all flights were grounded, meaning U.S. airspace had been ordered to be closed, with aircraft already flying being told to land at the nearest possible airport. Okay, so we already know Tucker is feeding us disinformation. That is, false information based on intentionally manipulated or misconstrued messages. Watch out. Let's continue.
huge deal. What happened?
Again, the government didn't ground all the planes. As we just showed, the order from the FAA was to pause all domestic departures, as opposed to on 9/11 when all flights were immediately grounded.
Why did the government ground all the planes? So people ask, but initially no one seems to know. Pete Buttigieg, who runs the transportation department, which oversees the FAA, went on TV to say he was not quite sure. And then over the next several hours, a kind of story emerged. The government system that sends...
A kind of story emerged. Yeah, this is what's called breaking news. As someone who works as a news actor, I would expect that to at least be part of your drama training. You're certainly not doing any journalism. See, what happens in the world is that an event takes place. We don't know everything about it right away. And then as people start looking into it, a story emerges. How fucking sinister. Or just chronological order of events.
Messages to pilots, called NOTAM, had gone down. And then the emergency backup system had also gone down. Now, the FAA claimed it first noticed this on Tuesday night. When the problem could not be fixed, the government issued a ground stop the next morning. That's what Pete Buttigieg said. He described the culprit here as, quote, a damaged database file with no evidence of a cyber attack. So to repeat, said Pete Buttigieg, there was no evidence of a cyber attack. It was just your garden variety software snafu. Some contractor entered the wrong code. No big deal.
I wouldn't say that a bug that corrupts a critical database and brings your system to a halt is no big deal. But computer bugs are known to happen. It isn't unheard of, especially in government agencies, which tend not to run the most top-of-the-line equipment due to budget constraints. Unless, of course, you're part of the Defense Department, then they give you more money than you ask for. But I digress.
That's what they said, but it was not a very convincing story if you thought about it. Shutting down all commercial air travel in this country, even for a morning, is a very serious thing to do. U.S. airlines haul close to 750 million people every year. Air travel is essential. It's also potentially dangerous. So,
you know what else is potentially dangerous? Having pilots take off with no idea about weather conditions, runway closures or construction, or other information that could affect the flight. I think pilots ought to know those things before taking off, and if the system that typically provides that information is down, the safe choice is to pause flight takeoffs. Again, flights in the air were not grounded.
For a lot of reasons, it is imperative that our system works perfectly. But one day, our system just shut down for no real reason. Is that what you're telling us? Yes, explained Pete Buttigieg with a straight face.
No. He literally just said the reason was a corrupted database. I'm not going to get into the details of software engineering here, but there are literally an infinite number of things that could cause that, ranging from human error to digital mismanagement to mechanical failure.
Now, most people seem to think this was fine. We were not entirely convinced. And then the next day, last Thursday, we noticed that virtually the same thing happened in Canada. Well, that was very strange, because the US and Canada have separate aviation authorities. They're different countries, and each country uses its own software to route their planes. The systems are not linked to each other. And yet, 24 hours after our country's NOTAM system went down, Canada's NOTAM system went down also. According to the Canadian government, its system, quote, experienced an outage. Really? What are the odds of that? And then...
Okay. Where to begin unpacking all of the disinformation here? First of all, the similarity of Canada's NOTAM system outage stops at the fact that it happened. Canada did not delay any flights as a result of the NOTAM system issues. In fact, if we look here, we see that it says, while the FAA and NAV Canada both experienced failures of their NOTAM systems, it would appear that the FAA's outage caused more disruption to Canadian flights than the NAV Canada outage. Indeed, while NAV Canada reported no delays resulting from its outage, airlines like Air Canada and WestJet confirmed disruptions to their transborder services, that is, flights between the US and Canada. While Air Canada said that it could not determine the extent of the impact, WestJet told Global News that 6 of its flights faced delays as a result of the FAA outage. Flights are global, so when one nation as big as the United States delays all takeoffs for an entire morning, that's going to have some ripple effects over the next 24 hours or so. Not a surprise. The fact that Canada's NOTAM system also happened to experience an outage, well, it was a completely different type of failure. First of all, it was hardware related rather than software related. Anyone with knowledge of computer security knows how difficult it is to intentionally cause a hardware failure, generally speaking, while software is much easier to attack. But in any event, like the FAA, NAV Canada explicitly stated that their issue was not the result of a cyber attack.
We remembered that on New Year's Day, 2 weeks ago, something similar happened in the Philippines. Its air traffic control system also went down. For a time, no aircraft were allowed in Philippine airspace. Thousands of flights over Asia had to be rerouted, which is expensive and dangerous, potentially.
Thousands of flights? Check the source. According to Reuters, a total of 282 flights were either delayed, canceled, or diverted to other regional airports, affecting around 56,000 passengers at Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport, the airport operator said on Sunday. Not thousands of flights.
Now, this was also, they told us at the time, some sort of minor technical problem that we should not worry about. Calm down. Everything's fine.
Yeah, to be clear, they didn't say that everything is fine. Again, from Reuters, Transportation Secretary Jamie Bautista apologized for the inconvenience to passengers as he blamed a power outage for the breakdown of the central air traffic control system that also affected operations at other airports in the country. He said the outdated existing facility should be upgraded immediately and that a backup system was also needed. So, the Transportation Secretary for the Philippines admits that there are known problems with the facility that had problems. None of this sounds at all outlandish so far, but when Tucker screeches it, he sure can make it sound like something is going on.
But is everything fine? Or is it possible that somebody is hacking into aviation systems and holding various governments around the world hostage until they pay a ransom? Well, yes, it's entirely possible. In fact,
yes, it's also entirely possible to drive and steer only with your hips. But it doesn't make any sense, and it stretches the boundaries of what most people would consider sane. If it was some entity hacking into these systems and causing outages, why would all three be caused by completely different factors? These hackers must have been expert pilots in at least 2 continents. Or it's just a coincidence.
in fact, for example, in the summer of 2020, UCSF Medical School paid more than $1 million in Bitcoin, and they paid it in order to get access to their own computers, which had been frozen by hackers. They were held up for ransom. So,
yeah, we know ransomware is a thing, so please connect these stories.
What if the same people or similar people just did something very much like that to the FAA, and then to the government in Canada, and also the government of the Philippines? Now, if that were actually happening, the Biden administration would never tell us in a million years. They would lie about it like they lie about everything else. They would have Mayor Pete claim it was a software glitch from a contractor. And they would lie to us because they would not want us to know that they had been so utterly reckless and negligent and distracted by equity concerns that they had allowed some foreign hostile group to take control of our FAA.
Okay, so never minding the fact that the original story he brought up has nothing to do with anything except for the fact that ransomware is a thing. The implication here is that Biden wields so much control over foreign leaders that he also got the entire government of Canada and the Philippines to lie about similar incidents. Given that he doesn't even wield that much power over his own party, I find that unlikely. Also, why go through the trouble of lying about these things? Just because Trump lied compulsively doesn't mean every human being does.
But the lie could only cover so much because there would be signs of it. Almost all ransoms like this are paid in Bitcoin. So if the US government was buying huge amounts of Bitcoin in order to pay a ransom, Bitcoin prices would surge, of course. So the question is, has that happened?
Well, the US government is already in possession of billions of dollars worth of confiscated Bitcoin. Even if it did need to buy more, it would do so over the counter, not from the open market. And since Bitcoin is entirely traceable and transparent, it's much more likely that a secret large ransom would be paid using something like Monero. Much more plausible is that on the afternoon of January 11th, the same day US flights were grounded, FTX announced that it received $5 billion worth of assets that it recovered. Maybe that had something to do with the increase in the price of Bitcoin, given that it was FTX that caused the price to sink so far in the first place. Tucker Carlson poisons minds, people. Don't let yourself fall for that tinfoil hat bullshit.